Afraid to bring her gift back, Corona searches for Princess Carlotta. Finds a bunny and some men's clothing after losing the tea box. This is the narrative of Corona Lantera with music. Naturally graceful, she is the luckiest girl living and the daughter of the Duke. Makes friends easily and is content to have the prince's full attention. Yet, really, all of that is bogus music. And the girl is Larissa. She has been residing in for more than a year. The late Corona's hair is a wig and must reside in the Duke's mansion as his daughter. Everything began when the true princess killed herself and her incredibly avaricious and ambitious father was unable to stop it. When he saw Paula break selling eggs by the side of the road and realized he couldn't afford to live without hair, he forced. Larissa must now put up with the Duke's bullying and paranoia in order for him to pay her to go live as the Corona. Family and provides her with a lavish lifestyle to ensure the funny Corona looks the part. He controls the girl's diet, drinking habits, and attire, and it seems he did the same for his late wife and daughter. In the end, the Duke wants Corona to wed the crown prince in order for the nasty man can ride the windfall that the imperial princess is hosting today. A tea party when she serves the Duke's tea gift, but the guests discover that the Grand Duke is either renowned guy who is scared to return, and their hostess, who adores him, has excused herself to try and meet him in the palace gardens. Corona searches for Princess Carlotta using her current, finds a bunny and some men's clothing after losing the tea box. Corona believes a rabbit she found in the Pavis Gardens was abandoned by some nobles until she sees an. The Lantera princess is concerned about keeping it in the cruel Duke's home because it has a leg injury, but she also believes that if left in the gardens at today's prices, such magnificent objects would not be appreciated by society. Concurrently, a man going by the name of Sen is requesting Grand Duke Hadilin de Strelitz. In addition to his governmental authority, he is the ruler of the Grand Duchy blocks and several other kingdoms in Devildom. The Grand Duke is well liked for both his attractiveness and his enigmatic life. The Great Duke's attire and questions whether he has changed into a rabbit as a result of a curse that, according to the Strelitz family, was passed down from an ancient spirit curse that says astralas will turn into an animal when they feel real love, and that they can only return when they find genuine love. But the Grand Duke detested animals and was devastated as a young boy to discover he could turn into a rabbit. Yet although being aware that the shift would only last temporarily, Haterland avoided women for 20 years. By becoming engrossed in his political responsibilities, however, the curse was reactivated. And now that the bunny is in Princess Corona's arms, the Duke tries to run away, but gets sucked into her web. A pitying glance and considerate handling, and now her unwilling visitor, Hydeland notices the hostile Duke, the princess's strange hairdo, and her insane behaviors, who tries to hit her for not immediately meeting the princess. The vicious man is taken by surprise when the Grand Duke hits him across the face, and bringing him to the ground after the bunny's knockout. The Duke angrily requests that the animal be taken out, but Corona is fast to tell lies. But Princess Carlotta gave it to her as a gift. The avaricious Duke is ecstatic and gives the princess instructions to get special treatment from the prince. By the end of Corona is furious about the confrontation and is back in her room this year. But she's the Grand Duke is happy that the lice saved the little rabbit and is grateful for the rescue. But he thinks the girl is only pitying him, so he chooses to enjoy the unique intimacy as the two, who are not herself, share her bed at night. Corona offers to name the bunny so it can have a personality, but she gets sidetracked when she realizes she has to meet the prince before the celebration to mark the end of the year and conceal the source of the bunny's life as the princess drifts off to sleep, looking out the window, only to realize he's too high up and his changing form and recurrent injury limit his physical capabilities. The next day, Princess Corona makes an effort to think of a powerful and honorable name with each recommendation. The Duke drops obscene clues before deciding to Princess Corona ultimately chooses to accept her fate and makes a call to the Grand Duke of Quillenbobby after Corona selected Bobby as. The princess and her maid Ellie presume the animal, named Moody, is hungry, so they serve him. When he sees that she is giving him a bowl of pellets, he kicks them and helps himself to the girl's vegetable salad. Ladies believe the bunny picked up a taste for elegance at the Imperial Palace, cleverly hinting that the Grand Duke is there at the Opera House. Additional women show up. The men who, in spite of the mysteries surrounding him, want to draw Hattieland. Princess Corona, seated on a balcony, observes the gathering of nobles and realizes the Grand Duke seems to be quite popular, as many people seem to adore the Strelitz and Hadelin names, and find themselves engrossed in his life, as chronicled in the book entitled A Hadelin Sword. But despite Ellie's ability to conduct research, the princess discovers she is lacking a lot of information. After settling down, she apologizes and opens a box on her lap to let Loon breathe in some fresh air. Used to attract Princess Carlotta's attention when she eventually spots the princess. Music, the rabbit jumps from her lap and runs away, making her pursue it, at which point the prince hears something as he stands outside his balcony, the attractive woman sprints over, and Caden instantly recalls her name, but is mesmerized by her attractiveness, while also remembering reports of her illness, which he is relieved to. The princess suddenly stops in front of Caden, after noticing that she appears healthy, and recognizes him from his striking appearance. Princess Lantera realizes she forgot the meeting as she expresses gratitude for her good fortune in eventually finding the prince. The crown prince is impressed by the foreign manners and cutzes, chastises the security guards outside his balcony for allowing her bunny to escape and offers to go with her inside. As the older nobles enter, Carlotta hears the commotion and demands to know if the Grand Duke was outdoors. She is sitting precariously on the edge, holding a bunny by the ears, and they are astonished to see this. But what worries her is the prince immediately asks that she resign from her position as the identity of her brother's firm. But the girl is insistent that the rabbit leaped up there initially, and there is a standoff till Girona moves, and asks Carlotta to introduce herself, saying she was hunting for the bunny. Calmly, Princess Lantera, give way, and the young child gladly returns the rabbit to you. As the two women casually get to know one another, Prince Caden is amazed by Corona's diplomatic abilities. 3 hours have passed since Lady Antera gave Crown Prince Caden a surprise with her power to soothe his sister, but Grand Duke Hatterland has not appeared as the young girl had anticipated. Because his knight, who is now thinking back on the fruitless search for his master, knew that the opera was a plot. Ponders were alarmed to learn that Haterland had turned into a bunny, and that the Grand Duke's mental health had also been affected. Could be, but the princess, flanked by a throng of fans, is holding the bunny directly behind him. Sen notices Lady Lantera excuse herself to depart, notices her and the rabbit, and finds it strange and intriguing. Knight thinks this is the big two when he notices the rabbit's hair resembles his master's. Chase Catalan and gives. When Corona finally gets home, the famished Duke greets her with open arms, praises her for seeing the Crown Prince, but turns on the rabbit right away, declaring it pointless, the despondent. The princess apologizes, and the Duke asks to know when she will be seeing the prince again. She tells him she will end of the agreement as long as he follows through upstairs. Ellie is concerned about Corona's combative demeanor with the Duke, but the princess tells her maid that her presence is necessary for the man, so he won't object to her strict demeanor. The princess responds it's not the life she wants when Ellie comments that Garona thinks like a true noble. Aside from the two of them, Hedy considers his dreams, which include being married to the person he loves and beginning. Ellie says she wanted to travel to learn swordsmanship and write a novel with her family. To start a flower store, but is happy with the flowers in the Lantera gardens, particularly the hydrangea, which signifies sincerity. On this point, she imagines the happiness that would result from living genuinely, but she doesn't answer the question. The following day, as she tucks Loom into bed, she gets an invitation to 2 tea parties, one at the Strelitz mansion and one at the Imperial Palace. After receiving her invitation to the Imperial Palace, Lady Tara is taken aback by the fact that, while the Imperial Princess is hosting a tea party in her honor, she chooses to utilize the occasion to approach Carlotta rather than because the Imperial Princess makes Corona think of her younger siblings, the Duke has demanded a prince. Princess Lantera worries over her outfit for the tea party at the enormously large Strelitz family castle. The more Ascarona suggests a new scheme to attempt to get in touch with him. Dorona is in the interim astonished that the great man enjoys bunnies, but Ellie is fast to deny the idea that Hedderland is cunning and cool like a wolf, as this serves to remind the princess that she always desired to wear trousers, but in the neighboring countries, ladies were supposed to wear dresses in her 2 identities. Are permitted to ride horses in trousers here. Clothing for the wealthy and impoverished is required. This custom feels welcome to Dorona, who, despite being a lady, prefers to wear whatever feels more comfortable and has a soft spot for bunnies. The princess asks Ellie whether she feels the same way about flowers and the moon, because she loves loons even more. Quietly, Maid concurs with Garona that a person's choices shouldn't be dictated by their gender. Know that Princess Lantera is scheduled to attend 2 events. What a considerate lady she is. When she gets down to choose clothes 3 days later, she is repulsed by the more expensive gowns that Corona is staring at. Extravagant, but the maids hesitantly tell her that the Duke gave the order for her to wear them, leaving the princess unscathed. Asks the tailor to be inconspicuous while providing Ellie with instructions on how to fix a specific outfit. Having seen Lady Lantera's agony over a tea party dress, Loon helps us out by attempting in vain to gather enough mana to contact his knight. As the princess waits, she finds out that the new dress will not be arriving anytime soon, but the one she sent to the tailor worked out. Considerably more sophisticated, yet Loon recognizes the princess and Garona gives credit to the fabric for the remarkable result. He wants to persuade her that she undervalues herself, and that if her family hadn't been impoverished, she could have been a fantastic tailor, and wishes he could talk to her later. Lady Yantera turns to see Loon looking at her favorite outfit and is rather. She continues looking for a necklace after being encouraged by his approval. But when Eddie brings the jewelry boxes, she is shocked to learn that everything according to the Duke's extravagant taste. She considers how as she begins to leave, the late Corona must have felt shaken and decided to go shopping on her own. The princess kisses the rabbit in laments, having to leave Loon behind as he collapses to the ground and begins to cry. But soon after, a wave of energy passes through him, and he realizes his. When Mana returns and looks back, Hadeland realizes that the goodnight kisses from the princess have been gradually regaining his particular abilities. So if he questions whether he needs to receive more kisses to be restored, but openly happy that Larissa would send them on a little reunion, Loon pans a letter to Sen, and uses his newly acquired authority to send it over. Meanwhile, the clerk at the jeweler's shop is happy to give the well-liked Lady Lantera a stunning. The princess believes the price of the sapphire necklace to be excessive and recalls. Desiring to take it, she fled with her family and lived off the profits for the rest of her life. This is difficult, though, so she must now choose the jewelry to go with her exquisitely designed gown and dazzle the royal princess and prince as the Garona starts to. Will you take the jewelry? A different woman interrupts and offers to pay 3 times the amount. This person has been a long-standing member of the Paveti and Terra Marcus family. Families have before engaged in combat, yet Lentra claimed sole responsibility for their victory. Victory succeeded Parvati as a duke, but Marcus was the better choice. The duke has now lost his wife and heir, and the eldest. On the battlefield, Marqueson's conquest appeared poised to become a duke, but for the two, the opposite is true. Ladies, the headless merchant is back, and the fight for the necklace is underway. Bows to the enormous presence that makes Garona snappishly bay for blood. Instructs the store owner to double the amount that Chamalia Pabeti is offering, and the green-headed woman finishes that. The conflict goes on, and this time Corona is preparing the Marcus instead of purchasing the necklace. Daughter to do so and appear foolish in her eyes, and the princess is aware of that. The secret sapphire of the vast duchy of the Duke, who will force the chamelier to pay, is more valuable than sapphire. That price, and she succumbs to it, spending a year's worth of the merchant's revenue in celebration. Corona acknowledges she became disinterested in the necklace when she was back in her carriage. Had to struggle for it and hopes that the blindfold rumor begins at the same time. Chamalia's outfit appeared to be the new noble woman and discovered the attire and the unwritten guidelines around donning a design that was first shown by someone else. So by donning Garona's clothing. The Marcus daughter intended to degrade the Duke's daughter, but now that Ellie is on the smaller size to meet her height. Insulting, and she insists that they storm the cell, but Corona says no, requesting that she first inform the Dukes, so following the tea party, he reignites the battle. Upon returning to the dukedom, the women discover a gift meant for a fan of bunnies. A present that showed up at the Duke's mansion, and Lady Lantera acknowledges that it's family stationery and is terrified at away. But when he opens, she is taken aback to witness the Grand Duchy's Mana Stone, which is supposed to unleash the latent power of the owner, making it, ironically, more expensive and exquisite than the necklace. Compares to the dress that has been fixed, and that she will be wearing in place of the one that Chamalia stole, and upon bringing up the Princess Carlotta will desire to get closer to Lady Lantera, the source of the stones, while the ladies save are there. Luck Loon objects, saying that the term is too strong, but he's happy that the necklace worked like magic. The Grand Duke promises to assist the princess when he transforms back into a human, still motivated to do more. Loon and Garona snuggled in bed that night, and she wondered what the Grand Duke was like. Claiming that the man is unaware of her devotion to his bunny, and that she was unable to exchange the animal for the necklace at the moment when Loon is admiring her selflessness, but aspires to gradually receive back as much as she gives. When she moves closer and gives the princess a kiss, the bunny starts to tremble. Loon wants more of this as his mana keeps returning so he can then change back into a more helpful physique at the princess tea party attendees. Many aristocratic families from the empire assemble in honor of Ladylin Terror. The princess stands out due to her rank with ease, and the host she has already become friends with, but the Marquis daughter deftly demands attention, so some women remark on her outfit and jewelry, but she insists on speaking with Lady Lantera, and the princess is unyielding. Her comments in order to inform everyone that Chamalia gave up more money than she ought to have in exchange for the jewelry. For that moment, the crown prince and princess come for the tea party, and the imperial prince and princess enter. The visitors accept them in turn, but Shingmilia poverty is glaringly present. Before the others, who were staring and chatting nonstop, Princess Carlota suddenly sees Lady Lantera and takes off. These two are connected to one other during the celebration, with Carlota disclosing but not showing like tea because it's required by society. And the princess quickly suggests that they make their own since they enjoy it. Due to her tender care for the infant princess, Lady Lantera unintentionally attracted the sole attention of the royal until the last moments before the attendees leave the celebration. Ka later acknowledges she would prefer to have a black bunny like Corona's, but is not permitted to while pointing at a completely black fish. Bring these creatures to the palace gardens, and Lady Yantra then discloses that the imperial princess hardly notices that she gathered lilies from these gardens as she leaps with joy. The younger princess remarks in a brief conversation that Corona's jewelry must have originate from the manna stone of the Grand Duchy and are so valuable that, even within her family, only men are allowed to own them. Carlotta asks where she can get the necklace while everyone is staring at it. And that's when the Lady Lantera recognizes how valuable it must be when all the other women join in the adulation and compliments, with the exception of Chinilia. In response to the imperial princess, she says that a foreign nobleman gave her the necklace as a present when she was ill. When Carlotta realizes the man in issue is Heatherland d'Estrelitz, she starts to get more animated. As the green-haired Paveti girl and the consequences of her lie dawn on Garona, she feels imprisoned. Whispers for a moment of the glory, but just as Lady Antera is about to slink away, the imperial princess comes up to her and requests a private conversation about. Naturally, when Chinilia returns home to Princess Lantera, she is filled with jealousy and fury, buries her head in the covers she describes what happened at the tea party, and Loon is quick to point out the reference to the prince's desire to speak with him. The Grand Duke reportedly had earlier issued a communique in which he was unwell and unable to be seen, and the imperial prince had requested to send Princess Latera, who was obviously close to Loon. Something doesn't seem right to her, but Loon understands in silence that there's a significant reason behind it. And that reason is in the Heatherland understands Prince Caden is attempting to link with the Grand Duke. And if Garona succeeds, Lady Lantera will as well. The impoverished family would never be able to catch up, even though the Grand Duke is happy to have felt strange thrusting the imperial princess into his arms after having made restitution to the princess for his part in her advancement. She walks out to depart after agreeing to lay between the Grand Duke and the imperial prince. And the Grand Duke gives the butler instructions to find out what the princess was doing. The servant responds that she was answering a family's request, but he is aware in the back of his mind that even if the woman misses her own family, she is frequently exploit her relationship with the prince, as the Duke is always irritated about obtaining a portion of the imperial wealth, and he becomes enraged upon recalling that poverty is a challenge to his. Without hesitation, he gives the order to close the salon and bring his family to the throne at the dress salon. As soon as the princess and her attendant depart, Ellie tries to divert the princess as they travel through the woods to the Strelitz castle, using the latest Selins catalog, but her boss quickly picks up on the ploy so. The maid admits that she is worried that since the princess is the only one who will show there, they might be the only ones. Rears a rabbit in the Empire, accompanied by nightbirds in the carriage. Ellie and Verona start to laugh at the peculiar situation, but the princess observes the loon's dejected demeanor. When the women arrive at the castle, Sen and Shinen welcome them, and Lady Lantera soon starts evaluating her, and is unsurprised to discover herself sitting by herself at a tiny table far from her Sen brushes up on. His acting abilities, and the fictitious letter he intends to deliver to the princess, because there isn't a tactful way to do it. Reveals that the Grand Duke owned the rabbit, and she remembers the clothing she discovered in the grounds. Continues by explaining that although Lady Lantera does not, the Grand Duke had undressed to swim at a neighboring lake. Thoughtfully, she questions how the rabbit strayed from the lake and why the princess acknowledges that the rabbit originated from high places, but Knight would lie to win back his pet after her encounter with Loon. Society that, if she cared so much about it, asks why the Grand Duke isn't there demanding the return of his pet. The princess queries how the Grand Duke changed into his undies and hurried to the lake after learning of all these accusations. Regrets what she said as the orderly sees the Grand Duke running off to the lake woman without wearing any clothes. The woman breaks down in tears because Yantera is blushing with shame and finds it difficult for Sen to think of his master that way. The discomfort by expressing her worries about the informal invitation and going on to show her skepticism about when the Grand Duke is not present on such a momentous day as the return of Loon, the knight naturally becomes happier. When Halen's nickname is mentioned, he recalls his pledge of secrecy and disregards Princess Quest, thus Gunora. Returns to her thoughts, decides it is not the appropriate time to give the Crown Prince's letter, and gets up. To go at that precise moment, the Loon makes a startling scream, and shaking, causing the princess and the knight to quickly hurry to his side. Sen takes the cat away, sweeping it off the chair and marching off, stating he was going to look for the veterinarian. Taking it out to manage her affairs, the Duke's daughter is sad and regrets doing so, but she hopes Dad is not in pain. However, the knight is kicked to the ground as soon as he enters the house, and he realizes right once that this is no typical rabbit, and as fate would have it, his anxieties. When the rumors about the Grand Duke changing into a rabbit are verified, the knight stands back up and queries if the headland believes that if he decides to remain hidden, but this will alter once she learns that he is. The Grand Duke, who is a person at heart, is aware that without any attachment, he was unable to reveal the magic that brought about this existence. So Loon leaps upon his desk and begins screaming. Right to Latera, the lady. He introduces the knight at the beginning of the letter, but he lacks the bravery to simultaneously expose his own identity. When the knight shows Corona and her maid through the home, he pauses at a mural depicting his face to explain that since the Grand Duke is a frugal guy, the knight consents to keep enabling contact between. In their initial contact, the princess and Hadeland learn that the Grand Duke is ill and requests that Lady Lantera. Corona declines the offer, pointing out that the Duke's residence does not, and instead decides to continue caring for the rabbit first. Have a veterinarian, however, it's suggested to give him wine and salad in case he becomes ill again. Sam explains that the strange treatment is because Loon is not your typical bunny. Instead, he is from the Manta continent, therefore even his. Because the physical constitution is unique, the princess consents to bring the bunny home and asks that he stay near He, the Loon, is now prone to loneliness in the carriage, as Lady Lantera acknowledges. Although she says she did not protest, she still does not comprehend how the knight was able to let her to retain the cute bunny. The princess expressed her profound attraction to Loon and her wish to spend time with them alone, and the proposition delighted her. Allie observes that since the Grand Duke accepted the Crown Prince's proposal, everything has changed in Corona's favor. Led her to the stronger connection between Dorona and Hydeland perched in the carriage with a soft pillow. Hadeland is considered lucky because of the opportunity to enjoy wine once more at the Imperial Palace Gardens when too young. When the men play a sword game, Jace de Parvati, the son of the Marquis, while Crown Prince Caden, the redhead victor, attempts to make his opponent laugh by offering a compliment. But Jace ignores it, pointing out that the prince's abilities remain superior to his. The two men exchange praise for a while. Jace then asks the prince whether he has met his sister Shamelia, which shifts the tone. Jace goes on the attack as soon as Caden confirms the meeting, accusing the prince of treating the woman cruelly, and Caden responds, astonished that he didn't think of her as a suitor, saying he spent as much time like he did with the Duke's daughter. But Jace refutes that claim by claiming that the prince loved Lady Lantera more than his sister, which infuriated the imperial prince. Tells that he attempted to contact the Grand Duke via Dorona, but Jace is not happy, Caden says quietly. Considers that, in comparison to Jace, who was closer to Hadeland due to the Grand Duke's complete loss, Jace apologizes and turns to the Marcus son, asking him to calm down because the prince was cautious about who he let in. Makes amends with Caden, and the orderly announces Lady Lantera's arrival as she enters with her bunny, and the prince introduces her to Marcus, the son, even though she hates playing an intermediary between the Grand Duke and the imperial prince, and she sincerely regrets the lie that began it all once she is. After taking a seat, the men inquire about the bunny, and Lady Lantera replies that it is the Grand Duke's property. In the Great Duke's opinion, given his distaste for rabbits and his tendency to shun women, she is lying. The two continue talking about the unusual possibilities involving Hedderland and Lady Lantera when she excuses herself. Jace hates Caden by alone because of his family's wealth, but adores Hadland because, revealing his love for a woman in public after keeping it a secret from his pals, and then considering Caden's wealth. Marcus believes that if Lady Lantera continues to pique the prince's interest, he will likewise fall in love with her, and upon receiving a letter from Caden, the princess turns over the empire and admits to her maid that she considers the man of today to be abnormally thicker, and Cadence's gaze is too intense to look away from. Ellie thinks the prince could be wary of her because of his continued fondness, but she also thinks he's merely astonished by the princess' beauty and exhorts her to surrender to his. Lady Lantera remains convinced that Caden is looking into her in Loom. Silently supports her. It seems the Grand Duke has been corresponding with the imperial prince on her behalf, but Caden ignores his friend's advice since he is aware of the prince and is unable to articulate his motivations. To become significantly more involved as the girls keep debating the circumstances, they hear a disturbance outside and Ellie returns to see whether it's okay, but Lady Lantera recalls that Jace de Parvati had a similar appearance to Caden's. The maid storms back to announce the arrival of Nemesis, the greenhead, taking into consideration that the Marquess and the Duke's families have maintained their amity, and Corona and Ellie are aware that they need to stop in a bad scenario. So they dash to the drawing room, where Jace is having a meeting with the Duke, allowing Lady Lantera to stroll around. Jace gets up to give her a quick hand kiss, just as the Duke is expressing his anger at seeing her. The Duke looks at her with suspicion, but he ignores her in favor of appreciating a bottle of wine that the Marcus son has given him. The older guy abruptly returns the topic to the unexpected visit with impatience, and Jace quickly clarifies he is here to discuss the uncomfortable encounter that Lady Lantera had with his sister at this time, the Duke Pretento. Worry that his daughter went through that, and in exchange, the Parvati heir delivers a private document for forgiveness as Jace turns to the Duke's daughter and compliments her appearance, and the Duke tucks into the contents with ravenous hunger. He hesitates, wondering if the young man was after his money as he reads of the document stating that it may temporarily pay off his gambling bills. Daughter then blatantly withdraws from the two of them, leaving Ladyland terrified at the betrayal, but I'm more concerned with how the Crown Prince, sitting in the drawing room, sees the scenario. Duke Lantera asks his daughter to amuse Jace de Parvati while he is sipping a glass of wine. Enjoys the present from the Markley's son. Naturally, the princess is horrified and rejects the idea, but she keeps sitting down out of duty, causing the Parvati to begin speaking. And, although she ought to be appreciative of his visit, she politely informs him that she is not interested in continuing the talk. Based on her demeanor, Jace believes As soon as the princess begins disparaging his family, he chooses to confront her. The Marquis' son queries whether Latiland. Jace begins to retaliate as she verifies that terror is pursuing the imperial prince and demands that he back off. Plantera cuts him off, informing the young man that Lantera is where Caden and his sister will get married. Became duke, but Parvati was defeated in the war and made peace with Marcus as a result. Because Jace has already praised her appearance as a woman, the princess is irritated with the two men and mockingly requests that he depart. As Lantera turns to go, Jace reaches out and threatens her, but she pushes back, defying him to stop acting violently because this is outside of his authority and protocol. The Marquis' son firmly grasps the princess's hand, suggesting that Lady Latero was just another victim, still in agony, who is going to become entangled in a plot hatched by the imperial prince. Jace claims in her palm that Prince Caden calls her the beautiful liar, and begins to suggest that he's helping her when something smashes the window, sending a shard of glass piercing deep into the man's hand, laments missing Jace's wrist from a prominent location up a tree loon, and the laments their fruitless companionship following first aid from Jace Lees. Hera quickly, while in Latiland, takes her father's leftover wine and spills it at his feet later that evening. She queries Loon as to why Caden would disparage his status and call her a gorgeous liar. Regretfully admits that during the painting session, she had been more anxious and afraid of the physical altercation. She bemoans the fact that, upon hearing this fool repent his actions, her superior status and attractiveness felt so pointless at the moment. Equally redundant status and vows, as his body suddenly sparks with an enigmatic force to reclaim his powers. Observing Lady Lantera complain about being treated unfairly by Duke Lantera Jace, and just as the princess looks away, Caden Moon impulsively holds her hand because he wants to comfort and support her. Suddenly, Lady Lantera is seized with shock as the bunny's body swells up 100 times and glows with blinding brightness. Collapses, but Headland stops her before she falls. This incident raises an alarm since he finds it difficult to understand. Even without her kiss, if the enchantment had been broken, but first he leads her to bed and as he tucks her in, decides he must depart for a little while later, and monitors the princess. He is changed by another flash of light. Sen receives a letter at Grand Duke's castle, explaining what happened at the Lantera, and goes back into the bunny's body. Urges him to examine the family documents in the mansion for any indication that the enchantment may be broken by anything besides a kiss as he rejoices at the excellent news, promises to help as much as possible, and muses over whether to start with. Bringing some clothes, Princess Luna, as the Grand Duke had left his at the gardens the previous morning, considers how skillfully she has handled the imperial prince's cards, and is amazed at how successful she has been. For the next time, Corona realizes she needs to learn what Caden desires, even in the absence of actual social interaction or political influence, but even in the absence of these benefits, the princess is aware that she possesses more lead information. Based on her knowledge of Hadeland, the Cullenstrelitz Grand Duchy guards, and preserves impartiality across the whole Devil's Lair, with the exception of Lancel Q de Chelina, where the late Strelitz Grand Duchess was born, Lady Lantera discovered that even though Hadeland, Jace, and Caden seemed to be in a typical friendship, they were dealing extensively, and the imperial palace had been collecting magic stones for their purported capacity to enhance the wearer's abilities as a human, in addition to. In light of Princess Carlotta's disclosure that Caton possessed a collection of mystical stones, the sword studded with them, greater in size than Lady Lantera's jewelry, yet the young woman's demand that her brother should compel the affluent Grand Duke to wed her, and her scheme to insist that the Grand Duke provide additional stones to the nation after union, proving to Garona what the imperial prince desired, even though she is not. Unsure of Caton's desired location for the magic stones, how much he needs them, or how the Grand Duke feels about it. Difficult to discover without contacting Headlander Strelitz, but since Sun can provide her with all the information, it will seem to the imperial prince that, despite her inability to assist Caton in obtaining more power, she has grown closer to the Grand Duke. Stones, demonstrating that she is not the beautiful liar, could seem to be the key to obtaining them from Headland. He can't help but notice her brighter smile as she hands the bunny to send for inspection and blooming, and begins to make flirtatious remarks before Loon charges into the next room and slams the door behind him. When night arrives, Headland informs him that the princess has discovered Caton's plot and has given him instructions to disclose it. Everything that is left out of the book, aside from the Great Duke's present identity, which Sen muses over. Hadeland claims that his master had changed his mind because he was just trying to be fair to her, and that he now knew her better. The bunny nearly kicks the knight as he persists in asking how the Grand Duke concerns about justice, requests to be returned to the princess following the depressing appearance of Lady Lantera. Apprehensive that Loon, dressed in a bow, would feel uneasy, but Sen reassures him that the bunny. She acknowledges that if it were unpleasant, she would have already ripped off the bow, and they continue their discussion on a brief note from her experience, talking about Loon and his relationship to. Even now, Highland finds it surprising how forthcoming cooperative Sen has been in disclosing his master's secrets. Unlike the story in the book The Knight, which claims that the Grand Duke detested rabbits but was converted by Loon's unique personality, but aside from black, he enjoys gold, drinks any type of water, and right now he's more into wine and cocktails. Point Loon worries in silence why the princess is requesting private information instead of government records. But Sen returns to his story, describing the area where the Duke slew hundreds of bad spirits rather than just a few. The Grand Duke prefers strawberry shortcake, and that he hurt his leg rather than his arm. This gets Senta surprisingly. The princess gives Sen some treatment for the quick strike to the face from the Loon, smarting from the kick. Wounds on his face when the woman discovers that Hera had apologized for the bunny's actions, and the knight had discreetly saved her lavishing. This to him is a means of exacting revenge on his lord. The knight ultimately says, the princess, but controlling the wild rabbit when it's around other people, and the Loon can't help but feel.